Welcome to the Thrive TV show with Lauren Parsons, helping you boost your health, energy, and productivity.
Kia ora koutou and welcome to another episode of the Thrive TV show. I'm Lauren Parsons, your host, and today I'm joined by Ian Stevens all the way from Australia, from Enrich Training and Development, and we're speaking about bouncing forward no matter what. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you here. We're going to be chatting about the self-leadership principle that shaped Ian's life, the resilience mindset mastery tool that you can use to reframe any situation, and also some lessons learned from the type 2 diabetic recovery journey that Ian's been through. So thank you for sharing. Thank you in advance, Ian. I know you've got an amazing story to share. Before we dive into that, though, can I just do some this and that questions with you?
Sure.
Real quick fire. So tell me, spots or stripes?
Stripes.
Okay, nice. Beachfront or mountaintop?
Beachfront. I go there 3 times a week, so I definitely go for the beach.
Okay, beautiful. Chocolate or cake?
Chocolate, chocoholic here. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Cats or dogs?
Definitely dogs. We've got 2. Yeah.
2, okay. What breeds? Just give us the breeds.
Bichon Frise, the French that don't molt.
Yes, beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
and lastly, would you rather go a week without your car or a week without the internet?
I'd go a week without the internet just to be completely chilled out and disconnected.
Beautiful. Lovely. So there is a reason that Ian Stevens is invited to speak around the world to teams, to sales executives and senior leaders. He has a passion for equipping people with practical tools they can use immediately to amplify their ability to lead themselves, to adopt a growth mindset and produce amazing results. A prolific writer, Ian is the author of 7 books and the creator of 9 online resources, all designed to amplify your sales, leadership, personal and business results. So Ian, can you tell me first of all, how did you get into what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was with the West Farmers Group over in Perth, big company in Australia. And when they made me a supervisor of a small team, you had to go on the Performax leadership training program. And I describe it as a quiet whispering, almost a knowing, like there wasn't voices in my heads, but there was a quiet knowing that developed while I was doing that program, that's what you're supposed to be doing. That guy out the front facilitating, that's your calling. That's what you should be doing. So that kind of awakened me to look for opportunities to make my way into speaking, training, coaching. So that was kind of the initial thing that set me off on this path.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me, I guess the key thing we want to know is about how do we bounce forward? Tell me a bit about, what you practice and what you found are key in terms of these mindset practices.
Well, my philosophy is, and it's not mine, but I just love it, is that the universe has got your back. The things that are not happening to you, they're happening for you. And if I look back over my 26-year journey since I left the safety of the West Farmers Group and pursued my passion and my dream, that philosophy has really helped me bounce forward from anything that's happened because it's actually for me. Right, it's looking at the negatives or the downside and realizing, what, as my nana said over in Perth, she lived to 102 and a half. Every cloud's got a silver lining. You just got to sometimes be a little bit patient to see it. So that's kind of the overriding philosophy that guides me. Yeah, the universe is working for you. Yeah.
And can you share a bit more about your story? I know that, as we all have had some ups and downs along the way. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your story and how that resilience mindset's helped you overcome some of those challenges.
Yeah, well, I moved east to Melbourne with West Farmers to help bed down a major acquisition that took the insurance company Australia-wide. But it was really with the thinking that someone had said, Ian, it's really tough doing a speaking, training, coaching, consulting gig from Perth. It's very remote. 80% of head offices in the corporate world are on the eastern seaboard. So I took the opportunity to move east. And I was looking for the right opportunity. And that came along when I met a guy called Roger Anthony, who was my mentor. He's been gone about 10 years now, but he had a company called Crocodiles, Not Water Lilies. Now, we don't have time to go into that, but it's kind of the short analogy is we're not designed to be aimlessly floating around, looking pretty, acting pretty like the water lily. We're actually designed to be more like the prehistoric survivor, the dinosaur, who, if we leave the aggressive nature aside, actually follows a certain pathway to get its outcome just about every time. So that was the metaphor of be a crocodile, not a water lily, and go after what you want, right? Think big and kind of chase it. And so I joined Roger. I left the safety of the West Farmers Group. And after 6 months, I was living the dream. I'm facilitating the odd workshop. I'm delivering the odd keynote. And I say odd deliberately because I didn't know what I was doing at that stage, right?
Yeah.
So, but after 6 months, I'm living the dream, but I'm also dead broke.
Okay.
Because and maybe some of your viewers, your listeners have been through a period in their life where there's a little too much month left at the end of the money. I was definitely experiencing that, right? Because all the expenses are still going out the back door, but there's no revenue or not much coming in the front door anymore. And so, I was technically broke, but relax, after a few months, I did make a few sales. I tell people I sold my house, I sold the car, I sold my daughter's kidney. No, not really, but I did have to sell a few things to keep going, right? But eventually some sales did happen, some breakthroughs occurred. And I guess you can say, was it good luck or good management? But I was asked to fill in for a sixth speaker at the AMI conference event so this is the event planners in Melbourne. And as luck would have it, the owners of Saxton Speakers Bureau, one of the biggest bureaus in the Western Hemisphere, were in my workshop, and they approached me and said, "Can we manage your speaking moving forward?" And that's been a wonderful relationship for me over the last 26 years. So some ups and downs. I think people say to me, if you're going out on your own, you want to into business. You need to be prepared to do it tough for a couple of years. In my experience, it was more like 5 before I really found my feet and had a cadence and a rhythm, and the money was flowing a lot better with a bit more certainty. So if any of your viewers are thinking of going out on their own at some stage, take Dad's advice. Dad said, do your numbers on what you think your revenue will be for the first year, and then halve it. And then do your numbers on what you think your costs and expenses will be for the first year and double them. And then if you think you can still survive for that first year, then go for it. Right. Yeah. So I think that was pretty wise advice. That's certainly what I experienced. So highs and lows, fun and games, but it's all character building. And as I said in the opening, the universe has always, it's worked out for me. It hasn't been happening to me. It's worked out for me.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it's such an interesting metaphor. I've never heard that metaphor of the crocodiles and the water lilies.
Water lilies.
Yeah, very good. So I wanted to ask you about the self-leadership principle that has really shaped your life. I'm not sure if that's it or if it's another one. Share us.
No, it's another one. It's this concept that in one of my books I refer to a praying mantis called SOL, S-O-L, and that's short for solitude time. And I just use a praying mantis, in kind of thoughtful praying mode. Not that I'm overly religious and turning up to a church every Sunday, but it's this spiritual practice, without it necessarily being religious, of having some time, at least 3 times a week, for solitude time. It's quiet. I get up at 5:30 and do it for 20 minutes. And it's just sitting, thinking, pondering, planning what's coming up in my diary. I'm getting downloads, I'm getting inspiration, I'm getting ideas during that time because I'm shutting down all the white noise. It's actually not meditation. It's actually with a pen and a paper and capturing thoughts and doing a bit of thinking and planning. But it's re-energizing time for me. And it's during that quiet time, without going high-level weirdness on you, that's when I hear the promptings and the quiet whisperings and ideas. And if you have the discipline to do it regularly, like 3 or 4 times a week, just 20 minutes of soul time, I find that from a self-leadership point of view has been an amazing principle for me to live by. And what I notice, Lauren, is if life gets busy and I've got lots on and I stop doing my soul time sessions, like my emotional system starts to get fried.
Yeah.
And I'm getting out of control and things are slipping through the cracks. And as soon as I reinstigate one soul session, instantly I'm feeling more in control of life. Yeah.
Wow.
And then
Right.
all the positive and spin off and rub off from that. So, I've learned lots of self-leadership tips and hacks over the years, but that to me is the one that has really helped me stay on track and to listen to the quiet whisperings about who you really are and what you really should be doing and what path you should be following.
Yeah. Such a great reminder. And I think a lot of us, I've talked many times about the power of the morning routine, and the way you start your day determines the outcome of your entire day.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me. I like that, I guess, the flexibility of that, and that talking about doing it 3 mornings a week. So it's not, I guess, ever becoming stale, or, it's something a little bit different. You have some variety, but that you're consistent. And that's really inspiring to hear, as we all do, sometimes life just does start getting on top of us and we drop some of those, what I call my daily non-negotiables. And then, we get out of balance and it just affects everything. So that's encouraging to know that even just that one solitude, silent time can actually reset that for you.
Yeah, and I forget the name of the author, but I always remember the name of the book. It was The 4 Things Successful People Do Before Breakfast.
Yes.
And I think from memory, one of them was some sort of a meditative practice. They move their body, so there's some sort of exercise going on. The third thing was some sort of a gratitude practice.
Yeah.
And then the fourth thing was some quiet time to listen to quiet whisperings and get inspiration and ideas. And that's the one I label as soul. That's solitude time, just for you, no interruptions, at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah, that's great. And I think just with the way that things are going, obviously our fast-paced lives, the influence of technology, the fact that we can always be on something, always be bombarded with information. Actually, it's so powerful. It reminds me as well of Manoush Zamori's TED Talk on how boredom leads to our most brilliant ideas, I think is the name of the talk, or most creative ideas. And it's just, often we miss out on those moments just sitting, waiting for the bus, sitting in the queue. And actually, it's elevated that for me to being something important to do, to just sit and look out across the countryside, because I'm a very driven, ambitious, go-getter kind of a person. Activator is one of my number 1 Clifton strengths. So I love doing things, but actually putting that on my to-do list as a worthy pursuit has sort of helped me reframe it as important. So maybe that's helpful for anyone else out there that has that similar approach.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think my first book, The 7-Step Pathway to Mastery, that I co-authored with Roger Anthony, I got the inspiration for that when I was recovering from an appendix operation in hospital. So lots of quiet time, no one can visit. I'm laying there just staring at a ceiling. And so I got the inspiration for that book and started to map it out.
Nice.
So, yeah, very good.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell me a bit more about reframing. Most people, I'm sure, have heard of this word, reframing. Sometimes when something happens and it's a challenge, or we feel like it, we failed at something or something's gone wrong, if there's such a thing, it can be challenging to get ourselves out of that mental funk that we're in. How do you reframe? How do you recommend we do this in a practical way?
Well, Roger taught me a system of coming up with a series of anchors that allows you. I'm a master practitioner in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, so I love anchors because they allow you to kind of anchor yourself back into a certain state when things are getting a bit out of control or you're not liking what's happening to you. And life just does serve up a few king hits occasionally, like, your viewers, just, raise your hand at the moment. We can't see you, but raise your hand anyway if you've ever been king hit by life, right? And I have. If you haven't, a dear colleague of mine says, just be patient. Right?
Yeah, it's coming. It'll come one day and you won't be expecting it, yeah.
It's coming. So you have to reframe. And I'll honour Roger Anthony, my mentor, with this one, because he created what he calls the swerve principle. and it's represented by a little platypus, which I'll explain in a moment. But I teach it this way. Imagine you wake up in the morning and you hit the alarm clock, just another 7 minutes. And well, I laugh about this because we all do it. We lay there for the next 7 minutes, not getting any more sleep, but justifying why we can do it, right? So finally, we get out of bed after our partner's probably said, come on, that's the third time you've hit the snooze button. You're going to be late again. It's not a good look. Get on with it. So you then rush through your preparation ritual. No breakfast, you're not spending quality time with your loved ones, and now you're out in the traffic trying to get to your job or your first appointment. And let's say something's gone wrong. And there's a massive traffic jam. Like it's taken you half an hour to get 2 kilometres. It's just ridiculous. And just as that traffic's breaking, like you get up to 60 kilometres an hour and then you nudge 70 and you're finally getting to 80. Now you're on the freeway where you can do 110, right? But you're finally just getting to 80 and someone cuts you off in traffic and you have to brake to avoid a collision. Now, Lauren, you tell me, what's the normal reaction for the average person out there? Right?
Possibly not cool, calm and collected, yeah.
No, a little bit of road rage, right? Yeah. And I laugh at this too. We try and get up beside that person to kind of give them the hairy eyeball, not happy with your driving ability, right? And they know they cut you off in traffic. So here's what Roger said you have to do to practice it out in traffic. When someone cuts you off, you have to consciously say out loud, even if no one else is in the car with you, right? Or someone else is in the car with you, I meant to say. You've got to say out loud, what a great swerve. And actually congratulate them on the quality of the swerve they've just pulled off.
Okay.
Right. And it's like genuinely, if I had to practice that swerve for 3 weeks, I couldn't have executed as well as you just did. Right. So, and watch what it does to you. It's a reframe initiative because you stay resourceful in a really good state and you don't give away your state of mind to someone who's going to turn left or right or get off at the next exit. You're never going to see him again. Right? Because normally what happens is road rage, we get upset with them. Now we walk into work just in time to be half an hour late, right? More stress and pressure. And of course, who put that stress and pressure on ourselves?
Ourselves.
We did.
Start hitting that snooze button was,
Absolutely.
the start of that cascade, I can see.
Absolutely, yeah. And so we walk into work and someone goes, good morning. And you go, who said it is? Right. And you're kind of in that state for the rest of the day. So what a great swerve. Now, swerves don't actually happen just out on the highways.
Yeah.
Right. The boss walks in and says, look, I really need this done before you go home. What a great swerve. You can't handle it. You can manage your attitude towards it. Yeah. Or the hot water system breaks and you're up for a $3,000 bill. What a great swerve. You can't change it. You just got to stay resourceful so you can think about ways to get through that little financial hiccup. So I've found the power of the swerve principle is amazing, which is why I've got a little prop down in my drawer here of a platypus. The reason Roger used a platypus for this, if you watch our Australian platypus underwater, they are constantly swerving. They're dodging around rocks and logs. They just turn everything into a game. And that's what we got to do with life. It's a serious game, don't get me wrong, but let's not let things knock our emotional system for 6. Let's just treat it as a chance to reframe and go, what a great swerve. And, in my experience, there's always been good in the swerve. Sometimes it's taken a while for me to see it, but there's always good in it.
I was just thinking about that as well. For me, like a big king hit that we experienced last year was my home office being fully flooded, muddy water through everything, things destroyed, 9 months out of the house, so much, pressure, stress, decisions to make. It was a really challenging time. And at the same time, even just listening to that, it's like, wow, what a great swerve. And that immediately makes me think, wow, what have I learned from that? Which obviously I've already spent time thinking about, but you can see how it's just shortening that gap. And, from the, oh no, this has happened to, okay, now what?
Yes.
What do I learn from that? What were some of the benefits that have come out of that? Obviously, you still got to walk through the pain and the hurt and the grieve, the loss of all the things. But at the same time, I love that, what a great swerve. Just, and when you think about just the road rage example, or those sort of, when little things push our buttons, rather than giving over your emotional intelligence and now walking around with a black cloud over your head and kind of dumping on everyone else that you come into contact with. You can just actually choose to, make it like water off a duck's back and carry on.
Yeah.
It reminded me of my daughters have a book called Olive in the Bad Mood, and it's these animal characters, and the cat walks in and she's in a bad mood and she's got like a storm cloud above her head, and every person she interacts with, she just has this negative interaction with them and insults them or kicks something and it bangs into her friend, and she one by one ends up putting clouds over all of her friends. And then the irony at the end of the book is that she goes to share her lollies with everyone, and she's kind of like, what, are you guys in a bad mood? Like, why would you be in a bad mood? So, emotions are contagious. All that say, emotions are contagious, and I love that.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's your office being flooded, out of your house for 9 months. Down here in Australia, that's what I would call a great bloody swerve, right? That's a big swerve, but it's still a swerve. And I'm sure if you look back on that now, I don't know, you've taken the opportunity to change something with your office layout, or you've renovated a different way, and now it's actually working better for you than it was pre-flood, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It's a bit like COVID. We've all had to change the way and adapt the way we do things. And there's positives. There's always opportunity through adversity, isn't there? So
and I remember driving home from a meeting with Roger Anthony, my mentor, and his crocodiles, not water lilies analogy. And he's just taught me the swerve principle. And this guy cuts me off on the way home, and I've actually gone, what a great swerve, you friggin' idiot. Right. And so my old habits kind of jumped in because I hadn't got the swerve principle in as a pattern yet of how I respond to things. So Roger would laugh at that because he said, okay, right then you were being a crocodilly. You weren't a crocodile, you kind of weren't a water lily, you were a crocodilly, while your old habits were kind of still coming through until you rewire your neurology.
Yeah, and that takes time, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sure does.
So speaking of habit change, really interested for you to share, it's a really personal story, I'm sure, about your journey with type 2 diabetes, how that came about, and, what did you change and what was the result from that?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I'm technically non-diabetic now, but I've got to be really careful and monitor it because I can slip back into it easily. It's a weakness in my DNA and my genes. Mum and dad were adult onset diabetic, diagnosis in their 60s. My brother was diagnosed with it in his late 40s. I was in my late 40s as well. So it's been an interesting journey over the last kind of 8 years now to manage that. And I've had to lean on that 7-step pathway to mastery that Roger and I talked about in the book by the same name. Shameless plug, available in all good bookstores for $24.95, right? Nice. And I tell people I'm really proud of that book because it's in its 3rd print run. First time I printed 10, gave them to family for Christmas. Then I printed 20, taken me 3 years to move them, and I printed 5 last week because I've got a conference coming up that I'll sell a couple at. It's going gangbusters, right? No. But the 7 steps, very loose. You've got to be open. When you've got an open mind, you move to aware, you become more aware, but then you've got to commit. You've got to commit to doing something. And my commitment was that even though they're saying adult onset diabetes, you're going to be popping pills for the rest of your life, my research opened up a little glimmer of hope that it's lifestyle oriented. And if I choose to take another path and radically change what I'm whacking in my gob and keep the exercise fairly regular to burn off the excess sugars, then I can technically be non-diabetic. And like I said, I've got to watch it. So I've got to commit to that. I've got to implement a plan. I've got to persist with it. And when I don't do step 5 of mastery in terms of persisting, then and I let my food and beverage get a bit out of control, then the sugar levels rise in terms of my blood tests. Then you've only got to monitor, which is step 6, and then you find you arrive at step number 7, where you've created a new subconscious habit. So I kind of have had to walk the talk of the book I wrote. Isn't that interesting that the universe says, okay, we'll test you. If you're really committed to these 7 steps, you're going to have to walk them, buddy, when it comes to adult onset diabetes. And look, if anyone is borderline. They are heading for, type 2 diabetes. What I have discovered through the help of my naturopath and professionals is it's not a sugar issue. Regularly misunderstood. It's an oil issue. You've got to watch your sugar levels, but it's the oil that you're mixing in with your foods that is the main issue, because the oil intake closes off the receptors in your cells and they won't take insulin in. So my body still produces insulin, but it doesn't allow it into the cells because I had too much oil going on in my diet. So I think I'm being healthy having avocado on toast with my egg. So I'm getting my protein through my egg, but I'm also getting cholesterol from the egg, and I'm getting oil, be it good oil, but I'm getting oil from my avocado. So what I've learned to do, if I'm going to have eggs on toast, it's just an egg on toast with no butter. Don't put oil into the equation. So it's how you are mixing your foods that is critical if you want to manage adult onset diabetes well. And when I stay on the pathway by following those 7 steps, I can be non-diabetic.
So interesting. Yeah. And, again, it just shows the power of our day-to-day habits, our lifestyle habits. For me, I had an experience of having gestational diabetes, which is a specific type of diabetes that can occur during pregnancy. And it was when we were living in Australia. I can still remember being floored and being in tears when my doctor phoned me and says, "Oh, Lauren, you've actually tested positive for this." It was, but again, it was one of those swerves, and it really quickly it became a huge blessing because it was such a good opportunity to learn a whole lot more about an area that I already knew a lot about nutrition. I'd already been teaching about nutrition. I was in the middle of writing a book on nutrition, but now I was also pricking my fingers and testing my blood sugars 4 times a day and having to manage that. I've got to go for another walk now just to get them down a bit because I can't have more than 2 highs in a week. And so it was just, and fortunately we're now clear, but it was a really big eye-opener just in terms of that level of understanding. So, yeah.
And talking of pricking your fingers 4 times a day, because I've been through that. When I was about 18, I won't go into the gory detail, but I've accidentally put my hand out to stop a slamming door and gone straight through a glass panel. And then I've ripped my hand back and done even more damage to 2 of my fingers, where I had like 26 stitches to put the top of my fingers back on. But what a great swerve, because down the track, I have to now prick my finger 4 times a day. I've got 2 pads here where I can prick my fingers and take my blood test from. Don't feel a thing. Don't feel a thing, right? What a great swerve when it happened, but there was good in it eventually.
Yeah. Very interesting. So just quickly, what would be 1 or 2 tips for people on habit change? Any sort of practical ideas that really helped you when you obviously had to do a lot of habit change? Yep. What were the key things that helped with that?
Well, it's either you've got to follow a 7-step pathway, and that's going to take some time. And, that old thinking you and I heard 20 years ago about 21 days to create a new habit subconsciously, I'm going to call BS on that. My experience is it's closer to 6 months. Right, of you being really conscious and changing your lifestyle or your behavior, and that resets your neurology over time. The quicker way to do it is read some information about a belief rewire. I mean, Google it. There's lots on belief rewire now, and if you can even book yourself in, if it's a habit that's really holding you back or a limiting belief that's holding you back, it would be worth finding a good NLP practitioner and ask them that you want a belief rewire on X and get them to work with your subconscious mind on it, because that fast tracks, it snaps the current neuro pathway and allows you to wire up a more resourceful way of thinking. And you can get that's in an instant rather than 6 months. And so, if you want to fast track an outcome with a changed behaviour and therefore the result, I would be working with your subconscious mind a little more effectively.
Very good. I agree. Fantastic. So, Ian, if people wanted to find out more about you or get in touch, what's the best way to connect with you?
The easiest way is just go to the website, Ian Stevens Speaks. That's Stevens with a PH, but ianstevensspeaks.com. And at that website, You can find my store and all the books. You can find a link to my training and development website. So that's the easiest way to get in touch. And there's a couple of free resources there as well if anyone's interested.
Fantastic. Yeah. And if people are listening into just the audio only version, I encourage you to head to thrivetvshow.com where you'll be able to see the TV show version and listen in again if you're only picking that up now. So just to wrap up, Ian, what would be, if there was one final thing that you could share with our listeners, what would that be?
One final thing to share with listeners. Wow. I think it's if you get those quiet solitude sessions happening and they become a habit, you'll get clarity on who you really are, right? So, and I've found having clarity on who I am and what my mission and purpose is in this lifetime without going high-level weirdness on you, boy, that clarity is an amazing thing, because I've been able to say no to things that are not in alignment with who I really am. Or I can partner up and collaborate on projects that are in alignment with who I am. But you've got to have clarity on the who, because then the what becomes much clearer and the how starts to form for you. So that'd be my parting wisdom. Luckily, at an early age, I think I got those quiet whisperings about who you really are, and then had the courage to follow that pathway. So, yeah, and I think it's something you detect rather than you don't have to go and sit on a mountain for 3 months with a guru. You just need to listen to the promptings from a quiet mind.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for everything you've shared, for sharing your story and your tips and analogies. There's been so much in there. I hope that people will go away and take action, follow some of those steps. My pleasure. Been great to be involved. Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for listening in. That's been another episode of the Thrive TV show. Go out and thrive.
Thank you for listening to the Thrive TV show with Lauren Parsons. Visit thrivetvshow.com to access the show notes and discover our fantastic bonus content. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring episode.